Hey everybody, I'm Katallina, and today we're here to talk about episode 4 of the Ossan Newbie Adventurer. Today's episode was pretty unique because we actually got an episode that was almost entirely a flashback that showed us how Rick got his start and what made it so that he actually ended up going from being a guild receptionist to training to become an adventurer. And I think they did a really great job with this story. I really enjoyed it, and I love how it both answered some of the questions about that transition that I had had for the last few episodes, as well as showing us how he and Reanette actually met each other, which I also thought was incredibly wholesome and cute. Let's start there because that's kind of where things really begin for us, in that he met her when she was confronting a troll, and he actually didn't realize that she was a fighter. He thought she was probably just some kind of regular maid because of her outfit, and he actually tries to step in and protect her. And although it is her who ultimately defeats that creature, she recognizes in him that he has the courage to stand up to things, and she admires the fact that he wanted to help her, even if it wasn't actually within his means to do so. His heart was in the right place, and this, in theory at least, led to her accepting an offer from him to go out for some food, which he actually almost made as a rejection, which was funny because he made it seem like he was potentially kidding because he was trying to cover for himself. But she had accepted, and they were getting ready to go and do that when all sorts of creatures started showing up, and he ended up finding her fighting tons of trolls and other things, and that was all going fine until an energy blast came through that made her aware of the fact that there was a dragon present. And it turns out that something we didn't know about Reanette up until this point in the story is that Reanette has some form of PTSD related to dragons. From an image we see in that moment, it looks like she had her own flashback showing some kind of family situation or some other thing where a dragon did some kind of carnage and she probably couldn't do anything about it. I also wonder, in passing, she made this comment about not having laughed since she was 8. I wonder if something about what happened with that other dragon and the effect it's had on her is also potentially responsible for this lack of emotionality that she has. That would be interesting. But the dragon ends up showing up, and while Rick and Reanette are joined by a bunch of people from the guild who come to try and help, it turns out that anyone under an A rank, generally speaking, is terrified of dragons, panics, and loses control, much as Reanette has, despite the fact that she's S rank. She's dealing instead, as I said, with some kind of like PTSD-esque thing, which is completely understandable. Fortunately for all of them, something that they don't know, but that we as the viewer do because of the story we've been following in this episode, is that Rick was actually born with some kind of inborn skill. And what we know from watching his past and watching parts of his childhood in this episode is that he's been trying frantically to get that to unlock, but it hasn't during his whole life. And due to the advising of his parents, which was practical and common sense advice, he actually ended up becoming a guild receptionist rather than ever trying his hand at any kind of being an adventurer. Now, with no other choice left because the dragon has put a barrier down, Rick actually reaches within himself and manages to get a hold of that inborn skill and successfully uses it to destroy the dragon, saving not only Reanette but also all of the guild people that he's become friends with over the years during his job. I thought that was absolutely amazing, and I thought that it was really cool to see how important it was for him to actually try. I mean, in this situation with how dangerous being an adventurer is, it's 1000% understandable that the story went for him trying in a situation where no other option was left. However, I would like to point out that in most situations in the real world, you don't need to wait for a dragon to be attacking you. Whatever it is you're dreaming of doing, whatever it is you've always wanted to do with your life, you can't necessarily just step out and instantly do it, but you can always take the first step to learning a new thing. And I think that's one of the key themes and ideas of this show, and it's one of the reasons that I so deeply love it. The next thing that we should absolutely talk about is the fact that when Reanette first met Rick. She actually honestly told him, because of the way that magic works in this world, that he would never be able to become an adventurer because he didn't actually strive to cultivate magic in his youth. Fortunately for Rick, what Reanette realizes when he's fighting the dragon and when his ability comes out is that he has a ton of potential. And it turns out, fortunately for him, that means that she's actually mistaken in her assessment. And I think this is actually really cool because, to me, it ties into this idea when we think about the PTSD I was describing and her absolute paralysis in the face of a dragon, despite being S rank, and then Rick's limitations on magic because of the way that he has set up his life and everything. Both Reanette and Rick are an adventurer who hypothetically has some form of a flaw. And again, I think this is another beautiful thematic statement, which is that even if you want to do something, you should never stop doing something you love just because you don't do it perfectly. That's nonsense. I mean, sure, there is some truth to the idea that you should try to find something stable and secure and everything for your life if something you try doesn't work out. Or that you should plan some form of stability as you make an attempt at something. Those are true points. But to have never tried because you are too afraid to fail is the worst thing there is, because if you don't try, then you fail by default. And that's nonsense. You should at least have the courage to give your goals a shot. And I think that that's something this show talks about a great deal, and I super love it for that. Anyway, despite the fact that this was more of a flashback episode, I super enjoyed it. I really loved getting to see a better look into Reanette and Rick's characters and how they met and what kind of history they actually had and what Rick's life was like before he became an adventurer. Now that he has successfully passed his tests, moving forward, I'm sure we're going to get some more crazy, epic adventures, and I'm definitely looking forward to that. But those are my thoughts on this, so what did you guys think of this episode? I'd love to know, so drop a comment below, and I'll see you in the next video. Talk to you later. Bye!